In Dance Dance Revolution, some of the titles offer what are called challenge courses. These courses are consisted of 4 or more songs and serve the purpose of testing a player's consistency. The catch about these is that you have a different life bar than your traditional life bar, as you have 4 batteries in place instead. Any judgment that breaks your combo will take one of these away, and at the end of each song, you can either gain them all back, one of them back, or sometimes none at all. One game in particular had a course that even top players didn't want to touch, and is known as the hardest challenge course in all of DDR today. That course is Boss Rush Supernova 2. DDR Supernova 2 was released in Japan on August 22, 2007, and would be released in North America about 5 months later. This mix introduced quite a few new cuts that would challenge the most experienced DDR players, and even today are some of the hardest charts in DDR's entire catalog. These are Dead End Groove Radar Special, NGO, Paranoia Hades, and Pluto Relinquish. The Supernova 2 courses were fairly standard actually. Barrier stood out a little bit as a relatively hard course, but then as you scroll down a bit on the machine, you stumble upon this course, Boss Rush version SN2. This course just seemed like a bit much, just by looking at the song list, as almost all the songs I mentioned before were in this course. Before we get into the players who tried this course, let's break it down to give you an idea of how hard it actually is. Paranoia Hades is the first song you have to play in this course, and it gives the player a pretty good idea of what they should expect for the next 8 or so minutes. This chart's main theme is centered around jumps quite a bit. A lot of these streams end with a jump, and sometimes these streams are even crossovers, which set up for very tricky transitions at 300 BPM. Halfway through, you're met with a slowdown section at 75 BPM with pretty much the same thing, but with some 12th note triple jacks as well. On challenge courses, you have to play these without using any speed mods, which can make this much more tricky than it already is. After the slowdown, you have a 12-second crossover fest to get through, along with some jumps in the middle of them. And with that, we're just done with the first song. NGO is probably the most interesting chart in this bunch. Filled with mini jacks and even jump stream at one point, getting through this is not fun. The slowdown might seem easy at first glance, but it's almost impossible to tell what rhythm the arrows are even going to, which can definitely throw players off if they're not careful enough. Similar to Paranoia Hades, there is also another long crossover run at the end with this pattern at the end as well. Trip Machine Phoenix is probably the easiest chart in this course. Relatively easy patterns aside from a few crossovers, a quick slowdown at the end, and not a whole lot else to it. Not necessarily easy in general by any means, but if you can get through the first 2 songs, this shouldn't be too much of a challenge to FC. While Pluto may not be as physically demanding as NGO and Paranoia Hades, it has a very strong emphasis on reading and memorization. To give you an idea of how many stops and BPM changes there are, here's the BPM breakdown. Nerves definitely play a factor here, and one bad judgment in your reading can cost you a chance to get you to the final and hardest song in the course, Pluto Relinquish. Pluto Relinquish will be the last song to cap off this course. The first 3/4 of the song have quite a bit in common with Pluto, with its tricky slowdowns and speed-ups, but the main difficulty of this chart is extremely jam-packed in the last 100 steps. 400 BPM or 200 BPM 16th crossovers bring one of the hardest sections not just in Supernova 2, but of any DDR song today. A brutal ending to the course, and after 8 minutes of playing, this is the last thing you'd want to encounter. Let's go back to 2008 and see how people fared on this course. The first footage of anyone playing the course would be by 513 on March 21st, 2008. He failed in the slowdown of Paranoia Hades, which was roughly halfway through the first song.
He'll get his next time. He's ranked 3 in the world.
Dr. D claims he has gotten up to 30% on the course, but no footage seems to exist. About 2 weeks later, a player named Yoko's Move would try it as well, but would fail a little before the slowdown in Paranoia Hades. On a forum called Solid State Squad, a user by the name Kaze posted a 98.8% on July 23, 2008, after someone mentioning the Boss Rush course on a thread. He noted that he was insanely close, stating that he was about 8 steps from the last step in the song. This came out of nowhere given that no one had gotten past the first song on video, so this was pretty significant progress to say the least. He would eventually give the course a shot on video on August 2nd, 2008, where he would get 97.8% through the course, failing in the first crossover of Pluto Relinquish. This video gained quite a bit of traction, and it wouldn't be too much longer until there was a first ever pass on it. At least, that's what people were hoping for. There virtually wasn't any word of the course after Kaze's close attempts on it. No footage or screenshots of anyone passing it, and the course would slowly fade into obscurity as newer versions of DDR would be released throughout the years. Let's fast forward a bit now, and by that, I mean almost a decade. All the way to 2016. On November 9th, 2016, the 6th Konami Arcade Championship was announced. A week later, people would find out that North America was actually allowed to participate this year in DDR, and 3 players from the United States would qualify: Christopher Life, Funga, and Kaze573. They were flown out to Japan and would meet other players from across the world. They would also meet up with DDR player Dr. D, and he had an idea in mind when they would meet up. It involved an arcade with a Supernova 2 machine in it. He proposed a challenge for them to pass the Boss Rush SN2 course, and while hesitant at first, they eventually agreed. Dr. D described their attempts as not the best. What we can only assume from this was that they were most likely struggling to get past the first 2 songs. Multiple attempts would go by, and Chris and Hudson had one last attempt before they had to leave. Both of them had a pretty solid start. They almost FC'd past the slowdown, but Chris would miss right after the 12th note jacks, and then again at the beginning of the crossover run. Chris would miss again, and Hudson would drop his first miss almost at the same time. With 1 battery left, Chris would miss on a crossover, while Hudson nearly failed alongside with 2 more misses, but luckily his first half in the run was able to keep him alive for NGO. Hudson would only gain a single battery back, but at this point anything will help. He gets through this pretty confidently with a slight scare on the beginning of the final crossover run, but FCs the rest and moves on to Trip Machine Phoenix. He's given no batteries this time and is forced to FC. Fortunately he does, and simply moves on to Pluto. His Pluto run was pretty calm and collected as well. He was given another battery, but getting through the next song would be much harder with only 1 left, so FCing this would help tremendously. He gets through all the BPM changes and stops, and makes it to the final song. Unfortunately, he's not given another battery again, and now he has to get through this only missing once. He misses twice, and he fails the course. His start is pretty standard. He FCs the 12th note crossovers, gets the slowdown, and now has the final crossovers waiting for him. He nails the first crossover, which was where he failed in his video from 2008, but then misses on a left arrow crossover on the next run. If you look closely, you can see the panel doesn't light up and that his right foot only hits the center panel instead of the left arrow. At this point, it seemed like it was all over. The last crossover was 3 times longer than the other ones, and the patterns were just as hard. Either the best course pass in all of DDR would happen on video, or Dr. D and Hudson would go home without defeating an 11-year-old demon. There's a reason why Hudson qualified for the Konami Arcade Championship, and hopefully you can see why.
Hudson, you just cleared Boss Rush SN2 on video. What do you have to say?
Chris, what happened?
Boss Rush Supernova 2 now 100% completed on video. After almost 12 years of the game being out, the course was finally passed in Japan during a random meetup with barely any preparation. And what a better way for Hudson to pass it than to FC the ending of Pluto Relinquish. Thanks to Dr. D's spontaneous idea to invite some of the best players in the world to pass a course from over a decade ago, and Hudson's phenomenal fundamentals, it resulted in a historical moment for this game, and will probably remain as such for years to come. On September 28, 2018, Fafems would pass it and would beat Hudson's score, being the second person to clear it on video. In 2017, there is footage of Ringo attempting to pass a note bar and got insanely close, but unfortunately failed in the last few steps. I had tried to look for possible evidence of other people or him passing it in the past, but nothing had seemed to surface. As of now, there are 2 documented and known passes on this course, and who knows which top players will want to take it on next. Shoutouts to my patrons for supporting the channel, and feel free to support me on Patreon along with my other links below. I'll see you in whatever video I upload next, and take care.